everybody, welcome to Muse TV. We are back for News by Muse, and right now we have a great interview with Mariana van Zeller, who is the host of Trafficked on National Geographic. Going into season two has already started. How has it been like for season two, and what has the reaction been so far on the episodes?
It's been really good. I think that it was even harder. This is already, I think, the hardest show to put on television. I have no doubt about it. We try to get into the access into these worlds that are really difficult to gain access to, and where there's a lot of people that don't want us to get access to. And you add to an already incredibly challenging show the fact that we filmed all of season two during a global pandemic. It's crazy, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished. I think with season two, we went deeper into black markets, but we also went wider and approached subjects such as white supremacy that at first glance you wouldn't think fall into a black market.
Yeah, and we talked during season one, and the season one was amazing. It was an amazing season. This one is even took it to a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. And what was it coming up with the topics for this one, especially during the pandemic, and what the restrictions probably could have been? What was some of the decision making?
Yeah, we always look at stories as to, are they relevant? Do they have an impact in the world right now? And also, why are we telling this story now? And lastly, are we ever going to be able to gain access into this world? That is usually sort of the hardest part of it all. And in this case, and during filming a global pandemic, we also had to add to that, are we going to be restricted from telling the story because of the pandemic? There were a lot of countries that we wanted to go to, or places we wanted to travel to, that we just couldn't because of the restrictions that have existed for the last 2 years. So it just definitely added an extra challenge to it. But again, I do think we did sort of push the dial on this season, and it really did take it to this other level, to the next level.
Exactly. And it's funny how some of the topics are so relevant to what's going on. And one of those, because I want to do something different than what we did last interview, I want to focus on one of the episodes. And one of the episodes is the white supremacy episode. This week, over the weekend, we just had an incident that occurred in Arizona during a rally that really incited that whole racial issue once again, and using it for political purposes. That segment in that episode was so informative because it really shows you the mindset of what's going on in not in complete detail yet, but you really did get into really deep detail. What were some of the difficulties of getting that access, especially when many of them either look bad towards media?
Yeah. We started filming that white supremacy episode in September, October of 2020. So 2 months before the invasion, 3 months before the invasion of the Capitol. And it turned out that actually a lot of the people that we filmed with, including one of the leaders of the Proud Boys, was then involved in, the attack on our democracy on January 6th. So it was an incredibly relevant show to do, and I'm so glad we did it. And like everything, gaining access is difficult on this show, but I would say that gaining access to these white supremacists was definitely an extra challenge. We experienced it in person when we were filming at the Proud Boys rally, where we felt that there was enormous hate towards the media. One of my cameramen was actually attacked. One of the protesters or people that was there grabbed his camera and sort of threatened him with a knife that he had in his pocket. So it was a very scary moment. I was called all sorts of names, even though we were there with the permission and following the leaders of their group, of the Proud Boys. It was definitely a very uncomfortable moment and sort of scary situation for me and my whole team. But that is unfortunately the state of the media. There is a lack of trust in media. There is a hate towards media that is incredibly unhealthy for a society and for a country and for the world. Unfortunately, that's happening all over the world.
Exactly. And that's the one thing I loved about this episode. It really hit home for me because one, you started off with what the incident in El Paso, where I have family in El Paso, and a good friend of mine is an anchor in the Fox affiliate in El Paso who grew up there. So that was an interesting point, and I saw a different point, and I saw that point from there. And then also too, when you talk about with the Proud Boys and a bunch of different these organizations, these terrorist organizations that don't want to call themselves terrorists, but also are recruiting people who are non-white. What family member is like that, who has a swastika on his arm? And I go, do you understand what that means? What did you learn throughout all this? Because that's one thing, like I'm learning through what your eyes, and what did you learn from your own eyes, seeing it and being a part around that?
So one of the things we learned from the white supremacy episode was that, you know, we tend to think of these attacks like what happened at the Walmart in El Paso, or what happened in New Zealand or Norway, and all these attacks, we call them, you know, these lone wolf attacks, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. These people that perpetrate these attacks, they are being inspired, they are learning, they are connected, and sometimes they go as far as going and receiving military training from other groups. So they operate very much like a trafficking network. And instead of putting guns in people's hands or drugs in people's bodies, they're putting hateful ideology in people's minds. But the only way that we are going to be able to tackle this growing problem in our country and around the world is by calling it what it is, which is a terror, which some of these are. We spend time with a group that used to be called Atom Waffen and is now called the National Socialist Order. They had sent some of their members to go train in Ukraine to receive military training, and they, you know, openly called for violence, and we're hoping that a race war will come. So we have to start dealing with these groups and calling them what they are, which is organized, global network of terrorism.
Yeah. And that's the one thing, like for me, being a journalist, studying journalism when I was a kid and still in the journalism game, that I started seeing like in around 2015, 2016, you started to saw the seeds coming. And I always believe that if Barack Obama wasn't elected president, then maybe it probably would have been different. But I think that was the seed that started everything, in addition to 2001, 9/11. What do you think is going to curb this? Is it our, because I automatically right now from what we're seeing with some of our political leaders, they're not doing that. Do you think do you think there's something that's going to be able to curb this and lower it down and calm it down a little bit? Because it could lead to something very catastrophic in this country.
Yeah, I think the January 6th invasion of the Capitol was a little bit of a wake-up call. I don't think it was enough of a wake-up call quite yet, but I do think that people are waking up to this problem, and they're now starting to call it what it is. You know, the FBI, the head of the FBI came out and said that white supremacy was the single most biggest threat to our nation. And what needs to be done is that we need to give law enforcement the tools that they need to be able to tackle this problem. Right now, there isn't a system in place. They do not have the tools they need to be able to address this issue. And until that happens, you know, not much is going to change. You know, the fact that I was able to sit across a Nazi, an American Nazi, showing me a video that his group had created and that was out there online, and that it was 3 easy steps, and the last one was to pick up arms and kill. And that if law enforcement had walked into that room and seen this video and found out who created it, they just don't have the necessary tools to arrest this person, because this is an American citizen and is not considered to be part of a terrorist or a national domestic terrorist organization. That needs to be changed.
Yeah, and I agree. And I love the fact that you even brought it home in Southern California and showed what's things that are happening here in Southern California. And I love that. And I love the fact that you showed that it's not just a middle of the country type of issue. This is an American issue and a big American issue right now. And I love the fact that you weren't scared to show that. Do you think, and I wanted to ask this because of what happened with the verbiage that was said, and we're not going to repeat it on this interview this weekend. Do you think there are politicians who are using this for their advantage? And I feel like that. Do you feel the same way? And do you think we're just going to see this more as we get closer to this year's election?
I think that what's happening is that we are allowing certain language and certain ideas that are incredibly dangerous. Because what happens is that once you open the door a little bit, the risk is that the whole house explodes, right? It's incredibly dangerous. And we're allowing that to happen. I mean, one of the things we investigated in our episode was, is it what is worse? Is it worse to have groups like Atomwaffen Division, who have been, charged with killing Americans, who are on the very one side of very, very extreme, or is it worse to have groups like the Proud Boys, who sort of mask their racism by calling it something else, but are nonetheless what is considered sort of palatable racism, but that are attracting hundreds, thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of people? What is more dangerous? And what happens is that these groups have become, very much of a gateway into more dangerous ideology. Once you're allowed a little foot in the door, then soon you'll be able to enter it entirely, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah. And overall, do you think there's a lot of issues that can be explained why this happens? A lot of it is generational. Do you think generational plays a part, or is it more generational, educational, and socioeconomic really do play a part of it? Is that something that you came up with after filming and finding out about this and putting it together?
I think it's a couple of things. I think that there's a lot of people out there that are hurting economically. And I think for many, they're being given this lie that the reason they are suffering and the reason they're not finding jobs is because of this set and group of people, and which is a lie. And the other thing is that it's the internet. It has become a 24/7 all-you-can-eat hate buffet, as one former skinhead told me. And it is incredibly easy to become radicalized these days. So if you're a disenfranchised teen anywhere in the middle of the country, and you're lonely and you don't have a sense of identity, and perhaps you've come from a broken family, it is not difficult for you to go online and find a sense of a wrong and very dangerous sense of purpose. And the problem is that there are a lot of people out there that are willing to feed these lost souls these lies. And the even more dangerous thing is that we are seeing politicians play into these lies. And that's when we should absolutely start paying attention.
Yeah. Mariana, I love this episode, and I'm looking forward to seeing tonight's episode, which is Cocaine Queen. Queens. Can you tell us a little bit about tonight's episode that comes out?
Absolutely. So one thing that happened during the pandemic is that a lot of people had to turn to black markets. There was an economic downturn. People were losing their jobs. And what we started hearing at the beginning was that there were actually a lot of women, in a lot of cases, single mothers, who sort of had to turn to the drug business for employment. And a lot of them were rising up in the ladder and were getting into leadership positions in the drug trade. And that was really surprising. As somebody who's been following the drug trade and covering it for almost 20 years, I'm always surrounded by masked and armed men. And very rarely do you see women, and especially not in leadership positions. So immediately I knew this was a story that I wanted to tell. So we went all the way from the favelas of Rio to the coca producing mountains of Colombia to find these cocaine queens, these women in leadership positions in the drug business.
Awesome. It's a very interesting story. I'm looking forward to seeing tonight. I don't want to keep you too long, but yeah, National Geographic is where you can see Trafficked. You can also see it on HULU. In case if you don't see it when it's aired the first time, you can always catch up on all the episodes. Mariana, this is such a great series, and you've done such a great job. Season 2 is even more impactful than season 1, and I'm hoping more people get to see it, because it just like the white supremacy episode, which Cocaine Queen is going to be. It's going to be very informative, and you really do learn something that maybe you don't get nowadays sometimes from even news outlets that are kind of like to hold back. And I think that's what I like. You don't hold back. You really do investigate the story, and that's what we need more of, is really the knowledge of everything. So thank you very much, Mariana, for being a part of MUSE TV on our 10th anniversary production season. So
I
thank
love
you so
it.
much.
Thank you, Michael. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
No problem. And we'll put links below so you could catch the episodes. See you next time.